Can you speak a little louder?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edith Benzimra. Thanks so much for coming. We're super excited to have Anat here speak to us about her book. Before we get started, I did just want to make a plug for Women's Group Shabbat. Amy Lewis, Amy and I are working on Women's Group Shabbat, which is coming up on March 2nd. So it's the first Shabbat in March. So we would love to have as big a representation of all the women from our synagogue. So I'm just making a plug right now.
Also mentioned Jen Niederhofer.
And Jennifer Niederhofer as well is working on it with us. So please reach out to Amy and I and let us know if you're able to participate. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. We've had a couple of these author events, and so this time we're really happy to welcome Anat Shmulevich, who's actually a member of our show, which is nice, who published his book. If you haven't had a chance, this is it. You can get it on Amazon. Anat, I don't know if you wanted to put up the board, but I don't know, it's over there. But why don't you let John, maybe you can just, oh, careful.
That cord is dangerous. Just
Okay, so the format for this is, Anat's going to talk a little bit about her book and her experience as a writer and self-publishing. She's passed out a piece of paper that talks about some of the different themes of her book, for those of you who've not read it. But I think it's going to be really interesting discussion, and then she'll stop after a little bit, and we can ask any questions that we want. Okay.
all these papers I brought.
Use the microphone.
Use the microphone.
Okay.
Okay.
I distributed flyers with the themes of the book for people who didn't read it, that you would be able to ask questions. Sorry? You don't have one?
We're sharing.
We're sharing. Okay.
There's not enough to know without enough.
Okay. Yeah, we can share.
Okay, we're friends.
Okay.
So I will start with
Use the microphone then.
Right. I will start with the general information. I wrote it down, not to miss anything. So I will just use it. I tried to find a book which would describe the life in Russia after Stalin from the Jewish side, and found none. My parents' generation, who were already adults by the time Stalin died, 1953, were getting old, and by now no one is living. Their experiences died with them. They put nothing in paper. My generation, who grew up in 50s, 60s, 70s, is the last living generation who experienced that life. These people are now in their 70s. My grandparents My parents and my own experiences would die with me. I decided to put it on paper. Turn out I made the right decision. When I emailed my manuscript to the Library of Congress for registration, I received a request from the librarian asking me to notify her when the book will come out. She wanted the book for the Russian Jewish history section. I received similar requests from the National Library of Israel. The book starts with a dramatic scene on the train, and that explains the name of the book. The name of the book, Where the Night Train Ends. So it starts with a scene on a train and it ends with a scene on a train. The first train took me away from my family to Moscow to study with most prominent piano teachers in the country. And the second train took my family and I to freedom from Russia and also from my fiancé. How would I classify the book? The book is for adults, also for young adults, and even teens, because I explained there how I was taught to deal with anti-Semitism and how I dealt with it. So teens can learn from that book and maybe take some notes about it. The book has been cooking for many years. I collected materials, and I raised my 3 children. It was not possible to write the book then. So when my children grew up, I had some time, and I finally started the book on the Memorial Day of 2015. I did it, I wanted to start on a day which I would remember, and it was Memorial Day 2015. They all went to the barbecue and I stayed home and started the book. Right. When I emailed this, right, okay, something else. The book grew as I was writing it, and it included more and more stories and details as they came to my memory during the writing. About 25% of stories which I wrote didn't make the book. You may ask why. Why? Before I sent the book to the editor, it was already my 6th edition. I read it myself, and I understood that it is too many back and forth, and it disrupts the flow of the book. So I decided to I was taking out stories as I went, up to a point that the book started flowing well. So these stories are with me, and I may use them if I will sell my book to a movie studio, which I'm working on that, then I will present them the stories. After I will register it in the Library of Congress. Right. Registration is very important point, because all the writers, especially novelists, they are always hungry for new material, new stories, and new ideas. And movie studios are too. So registration is very important. I became a member of a Women Who Write organization. They were meeting in Providence every month. And I was approached by a number of members who told me that if I would email them my manuscript, they would give me their opinions, advices. They also would pass it to published writers. I always declined it. I never emailed my manuscript to anyone. So after a few attempts, the members became angry with me, and they started telling me, "You don't want to share, you're not sharing." And I was thinking, yeah, I don't want to share. So, and I have 6 registrations, because I registered every draft. First draft was just the ideas, not even text. And then I started putting text. Okay. When I emailed it finally to the editor, she told me that I should write more about music. So I added 3 more chapters about music. So the book has a number of themes. And you have it in front of you. So life in Russia after Stalin. Then the next theme is the Jewish life. Then anti-Semitism and my Jewish education. Then how my family was affected by Stalin and anti-Semitism, and Stalin's final solution for Jews. Then the refusnik movement, then Lazar Lupalaver, his story, which is, he was my maternal grandfather. Then my music, and at the end, it is, I will tell you later. So you can look at the themes, and you can ask me questions from these themes in any order. Yes?
I have a question about music.
Oh, you know what? I put it last.
Yes.
Because I thought until we will get to it, we will never get to it.
That's fine.
Right, that's
Okay,
fine.
so I'll go to an earlier question.
You can, okay, whatever you like.
Yes, okay, so I was very, I don't know if it's a question, but I was very intrigued about your family's life in, I'm sorry, I read it a while ago.
This is the first, yeah.
Yeah, in your hometown. You said the town had good Jewish doctors and bad citizens because they were criminals. So could you just talk a little bit about, bit more about that community and how it was growing up there? It must have not have been easy.
Right. Okay. So this town in Ukraine by the name Horlivka was a hole in the ground. Yeah. And how my parents, who both graduated with distinction from Odessa Medical School, got there. With my grandfather was a head of ophthalmology department in that medical school, and even he couldn't help them to stay either in Odessa or any other big city in Horlivka. Why? Because of anti-Semitism. Stalin decided to finish Hitler's business and introduce his own final solution for Jews. So he started, he published, not he, but someone for him, published an article in Izvestia. There were 2 main papers, Izvestia and Pravda. And there was a joke that Pravda is truth, Izvestia is news. And there was a joke, there are no truth in the news, and there are no news in the truth. He published an article that Jewish doctors poison their patients. And it started terrible, vicious anti-Semitic campaign. And doctors were not accepted to work anywhere. So nothing could help my parents, and but they also applied as a third, fifth, 10th choice to small towns. And one time, one day they received a letter that they are invited to start the ophthalmology department. The town didn't have it. So that's how they ended up in that place. And there were other doctors with the same destiny. So they had a tight circle of friends there. And right, what is this town of Gorlivka? Usually in Russia, in every city, you have to have a permission from the police to live there. In Gorlivka, they didn't have a permit. They didn't, because no one wanted to live there. And all the criminals were welcome there. So you can imagine the atmosphere. Right. And I was born into that. Right. But, you know, I wanted to say it at the very end, but it is a good moment to say it now. I asked my graphic artist, who also read the book, I asked him, tell me, do you think that this book transmits a message of good parenting? He said, I think it is on every page. So my message with this book was that good parenting can raise a child in the animus environment anywhere and raise independent person, independent thinker, not fearful, and this is me. Right, and this is thanks to good parenting. I grew up in a family there where my parents and my grandparents in the same apartment, and everyone has had different role. The Zionism and how to fight anti-Semitism was on my father. That was his theme. He dedicated his life to get us out of there. My mother's theme was music, and my grandfather was in charge of my school. If I needed help in math or whatever, he always checked my homework. So I had a lot of attention, and I'm a product of work of these three people. Yeah. What else?
So, just a follow-up question. If Stalin was so against Jewish doctors, why did he allow Jews to even attend medical school?
Right. Maybe it would be next step, right? But Jews who already studied in medical school, he just couldn't throw them out. Let me read you.
You have a question?
Well, I was gonna ask when you left Russia and how did you get out?
We left Russia in 1972, and it was right before Nixon paid visit to Russia. Russians decided to get rid of all the troublemakers, which my father was one of them. And also known Russian Jewish poet Joseph Brodsky, who received Nobel Prize, left at the same time with us. Right? And that was, okay.
But that's your father, I mean, it's an amazing story. I would recommend that if people haven't read this. It's a, you know, I was just entranced with the book.
Thank you.
And, you know, it is, you know, how your father went about this, I mean, was
Right.
phenomenal.
Anything. You know, when one summer, when we visited family in Odessa, my grandmother had a summer house there near the Black Sea. So we went there every summer. Someone told him that Jews from Georgia can leave Russia. So immediately, next morning, he was on the train to Georgia. He went straight to the synagogue, to the town of Kutaisi, where a lot of Jews lived. And there were a few elderly Jews, and he presented himself that I am a physician, I have a daughter and a wife, and we want to move here in order to move to Israel. So these elders looked at him and said, this plan will not work for you. Why? In order to live, you would have to be invisible. But because you're redhead, and you're probably your wife, how is your wife? My wife is also blonde. And how is your daughter? My daughter is redhead. You will stand out here like white cross. Everybody will know about you. And instead of going into Israel, you may go to totally different place. So he understood this will not work. The next year, someone also in Odessa, he heard that people with no education can get out from Baltic republics, means Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. Next day he was on a train to Latvia. He came to Riga and also went to the synagogue, and they told him that he would be better off in Vilnius because there are too many doctors in Riga, and he would have a problem to find job for two doctors. My mom too. So then he had a friend in Vilnius, and he wrote to him that he is ready to change apartment, our comfortable big apartment in Horlivka to one in Vilnius. No demands, any apartment will be good, any area would be satisfying, so whatever whatever will come, we will take. And there was one, we didn't believe we will really find someone who, in the right mind, would change apartment from Vilnius, which was European city, because they were under Soviet rule from 1940, to Ukraine. But there was a man, Ukrainian man, who disliked Lithuanians and most of all, he wanted to drink vodka with his Ukrainian buddies. So he sent his wife. His wife came, my father timed her visit when it was plentiful of fruits and vegetables on a market. And Ukraine is known for very fertile soil. I read in one place that someone said that if you will put a boot in the ground, next year you will find something growing there. So he brought this lady to the market, and she found out that a glass of red cherries in Vilna cost as much as a bucket of red cherries in Ukraine. And it made her decision. I think she was blind. She didn't. He also brought her to stores. Nothing is there. Meat store, no meat. Fish section doesn't exist at all. The clothing stores, you would not wear what they were. And my mother never did. All her clothes was made by a seamstress, and my clothes from the early age also was made by her, by that talented lady. So, but somehow she was so impressed with these fruits and vegetables, and they decided. So they, by the way, when we already received our exit visa, and we had 1 month to leave, to finish all our affairs, send all belongings, whatever we wanted, to Israel. My mother came to say goodbye to her friends, and I came too. And she wanted to say goodbye to her neighbors. And one neighbor met her and told her, Frida, don't even come close there, because that Masha, she will kill you. So they understood what a mistake of their life. But we had a much better life in Vilnius, than in Horlivka. You know, first of all, I was impressed so much about Jewish life there. They didn't hide it. It was all out. They spoke Yiddish on a bus, to each other, in stores, and they also had flourish group who was performed in Yiddish, Jewish songs and all that. So when my parents took me to the concert, first concert I attended by this group, and I saw so many Jews around me, speaking freely in Yiddish, and singing songs in Hebrew, and doing sketches from Shalom Aleichem, things like this. You know, I was ready to cry. I never felt like that. It is like I was an ugly duckling, and then suddenly I became a swan like others. That was my feeling, and I was holding back tears all the time. Then when we came to home, my parents told me they also held back tears then. What else? You asked me something, and you just, that's how my husband was. I know how to talk, and I like to share. So in the morning he would say, "No, Anna, what do you say?" And it is like turning the key in the dial. "No, Anna, what do you say?" And that was the beginning.
I do have some questions about the music section.
Okay.
Is that
Yes.
okay?
Okay. I have here.
I just was so impressed with your descriptions of all of your different teachers and your teaching styles and how you learn different things from each teacher.
Yeah.
I just was fascinated by like what it's like to be a musician and to, how they prepared you. And what fascinated me was how you emphasize the importance of finding your own interpretation of the music. And it's, you know, as a non-musician, it just never like occurred to me that that's how real musicians, you know, think and act. And I especially like, I loved this section.
On which page?
On page 154, and I love this part where you say, does a poet write the same poem repeatedly? Then why would a pianist repeat the same interpretation over and over? Repetition of the same doesn't constitute artistry. Creating a piece anew every time is artistry. And in a letter to a friend, Chopin wrote, quote, I am puzzled with some of my students. They try to copy me, but I play my pieces differently every time. And I just love that perspective. Like, as a non-musician, you know, I just would never think of the fact that, like, even though the music is written down, like a true artist plays it differently each time. And I just was fascinated.
The page of music is the starting point for you. And then you start improvise with it. Your improvisation can be different depending on your mood, depending on the weather, depending on, are you tired? Is it in the evening or is it in midday? And it will all sound different. So this is actually this is an outlet of your expression, and you and that's true. Poet writes poetry, and musician conveys his feelings through his interpretation. So let me read it. Something else. I didn't have my family with me, but I had my brilliant teachers. They were my family. And I had my piano, my friend, my love, the outlet of my emotions, the canvas of my expression, the color of my mood, the keeper of my secrets, the source of pleasure like no other. Bad news, share it with the piano. It will absorb the pain and comfort you. A touch of depression, pour out your sadness at the piano. It will lift your mood. Feeling blue, the piano will help you. It will give you the gift of optimism and make your life worthwhile. And it really does. Yeah, I play piano in the evening and I enjoy it. I don't watch TV unless it's something special. And that's how I spend time in my evenings.
Do you still perform?
No. No. Look, I raised 3 children. I had to make a choice, and it is impossible for concert pianist to have kids. Concert pianist is always on the road, so I would have terrible guilt trips, and I decided I didn't want to have guilt trips. But I taught all years. Yes?
Speaking of being a piano teacher, on page 77, I don't have the exact quote, but I was impressed how your music education included not only becoming an expert pianist and a performer, but also teaching you pedagogy so that you could be a qualified teacher. And I had never thought about a music school serving both of those roles, but it's so important because not everyone is going to be a concert pianist, not everyone can live on the road.
Right.
But a good teacher is priceless, as
Right.
you know from your teachers.
Right. What was good about Russian piano school? They addressed both issues. That's true. And we had starting from a second year, we had a lecturer who just lectured us what to do and how. But then, on the third year, we chose a student. And we physically taught the student, and then the professor checked us, how are we doing. Right. So I remember in a big auditorium, all the piano students were getting together, and there were kids, 7 years old, sitting on the other side, and mothers who didn't know what to expect. They were sitting in a different place. So, and the music started playing. I observed the students. Some of them were looking around, were turning their heads, and like they didn't attend. And then I spotted a boy. Some just couldn't sit still. Right. And then I spotted a boy who was so thin, I don't know whether his soul was attached. And this boy was sitting, not moving, and listening. And I thought, this is my guy. My friends were telling me that his hands are so thin, you will never be able to form his hands, and you will lose your augmented stipend, was sizable. I didn't listen to anyone. I already made up my mind, and we started lessons. And I formed his hand, and he was very attentive. And at the end of every lesson, I made a point. I played for him. Sometimes even pieces I worked on, which adult pieces, he still was listening with attention. So I started teaching him. I gave him 2 lessons a week. And after the second lesson, we went together to see a professor. And professor checked my work and gave me her recommendations, and that's what made me a good teacher. And that is what is not done here. Here they have lectures, but in a lecture, everything is clear. This is a problem and here's the solution. But there are no 2 kids alike. So when let me read this to you, music, let's see what this is. I wrote the wrong page now. Maybe it was 82. Okay. When I was 25 and living in Jerusalem with my husband and 13-month-old baby, armed with all my knowledge, I decided to resume teaching. In my ad, which I wrote in Hebrew, I said that I was a professional classical pianist educated in the traditions of Russian piano school. Then I went to my neighbor so she would check my ad. She looked at it and said, "My goodness, Anat, there are more mistakes than words here." There was a long pause. You know, I wouldn't change a thing about this ad. It looks authentic. People will believe you. You can't make this up. I listened to her advice and placed my ad in the local kindergarten next to an ad about washing machine. And my neighbor was right. People were impressed with my Russian piano school education. And by the end of that week, I had 6 little students. It was March, and the kids were mid to late 5 years old, all adorable. By the end of that school year, 3 months later, I had 19 6- and 7-year-old students. At that point, my husband joked with me, "Luba, one more student, I will divorce you." Every student had 2 half-hour lessons per week. I had a ball. With all that teaching material, I could implement all I was taught. I tailored my lessons to each student, hired a nanny for my baby, and enjoyed my teaching. In the beginning of the new school year, I offered my students a group music theory and music appreciation lesson. I didn't listen to my friends who advised me to raise a tuition. I announced a free group lesson every week. Who wouldn't take a free weekly lesson? In the first half hour, I taught music theory, and the second, music appreciation. I played my records to them, and so on, and so on. So that's how it was. Then, I bought, the year after, I bought subscription to them for Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra sessions for students, for kids. And we were prepared for this. I knew the program ahead of time, so I played these pieces for the kids and explained them. And by the time we went to the concert hall, they knew the pieces, they knew the history of everything. It was very helpful to hear live music. And at the end of every concert, kids could come up on stage, and musicians would hold the instruments and the musicians would play for them little melodies that they would hear how that instrument sounds as a solo instrument. So it was very good. Here I couldn't do the group lessons because every child lived somewhere, not some in Providence, but parents were involved in bringing the kids. There in Jerusalem, all the kids lived in the same neighborhood, and they moved freely by themselves. They came by themselves with no right. So I could do many things with them. That's also they came for twice a week lesson, half an hour, and it is preferable than once a week, 45 minutes or even an hour, because a child comes home and he had a lesson on Monday, for example, and he said, "Next Monday, I have time." Oh,
Yeah.
right. But if he has a lesson Monday and Thursday, it's not much time, so he has to do the homework.
So I love, this is sort of changing topics, but I love the part of the book where your father, as a young girl, taught you to stand up for yourself and didn't treat you like a girl, just treated you like a person, who needed to stand up for themselves living in this very anti-Semitic
Which page have
neighborhood.
you on?
It's around like one of the
school, use the mic.
To prepare me for school, Papa taught me how to fight, in case someone would tell me dirty Judy. So, lesson number 1, knee to the groin. The groin is the most sensitive area, so you must try to hit there quickly before your adversary is realized it. Then Papa and I practiced this move to Mama's displeasure.
And
The
how
less-
old were you?
I was before 7.
Yeah.
Lesson number 2, the shot to the nose or the mouth. Curve your fist so that you use the full force of the middle finger and hit. Right. Then one evening there was a knock at our door. When Mama opened the door, there stood a woman, a stranger to my mother. Before Mama could speak, the woman held out her hand and said, "Do you see what is in my hand? There are teeth of my son. Your daughter punched my son and knocked out his teeth." Mama called me to the door. "Luba," my Russian name. "Did you punch a boy today?" "Yes, Mama." "I have told you over and over not to fight, to hold this temper of yours. I want you to grow up, a nice young lady, not a hooligan." Mama continued lecturing me in front of that lady and assured her that I would be severely punished. Finally pacified, she left. Papa came out the other room and asked what exactly happened and why I punched the boy. "He called me dirty Jew, so I gave him a punch in his teeth." After my explanation, he had a tiny smile on his face. Mama turned to Papa and said, "Tolik, nickname. You are raising a hooligan. Luba is only a second grader and is becoming a hooligan." No, her reaction was right. He called her dirty Jew. What would you like her to do? Pat him on his head? But she is a girl. You are raising her like a boy. To survive in this world, Luba has to grow up being feminine on the outside and manly on the inside, said Papa. That was the end of this conversation.
Was any school involvement after the incident?
School involvement?
Yes. That happened in school, right?
No, it happened in my yard.
Ah.
At school, I will.
Use mic.
Yeah. Okay. Right, page 1. What happened in school? I will read to you. Right. One day at the beginning of Ukrainian language class, one of the students started to cry. "My 10 kopecks are missing. I left them on the desk, and now they have disappeared. Someone took them." We had 32 students in that class, and out of all these children, the teacher pointed at me. "Did you steal his 10 kopecks? "No," I retorted, offended at the accusations. "Come here, in front." I stood in front of the class while she pressed her charges. "Admit that you stole his 10 kopecks. I didn't take them. You better admit it now, before I take it to the principal. I looked at my classmates. They were staring at me and at the teacher, transfixed by her cruelty as well as my refusal to yield to her demand. They looked scared. They had never witnessed such a duel of wills. From all this drama, I knew one thing. If the teacher wanted me to confess, aside from the fact that I didn't take the money, that was exactly what I shouldn't do. I didn't know why, of all the students in class, she accused me. All I knew, I shouldn't give her what she wanted. She changed her tactics. I will call your parents. I was laughing inside at how Papa would be pleased at that. You may call my parents, I said. Then she threatened with the principal himself would call me my parents. She added, you will be dismissed from school and never readmitted. I knew she was talking nonsense. Nevertheless, she persisted for the whole period, 45 minutes. When the school bell finally rang, she stopped grilling me, picked up her books and left. Then, when I came home, I told my dad what happened, and I asked why. He just said, it's not easy to be Jewish, you know it. That's what he said. What made me a Jew? Religion? Traditions? Gefilte fish? None of the above. Anti-Semitism made me a Jew. All religions were prohibited in Russia, and as a child I disliked gefilte fish. One might ask how I was able to withstand this humiliation. My answer would be my stable, happy life at home, where I was a princess. I knew that no matter what happened, what people said to me at school or on the street, I would come home, brush off the ugliness of the outside world, and enter my world where I was happy. From the moment Papa woke up on Saturdays and Sundays, he was telling jokes all day. Mama and I giggled all the time. Once I asked him why he kept joking. In this world, he said, one can either cry or laugh. I prefer to laugh.
And they were so strong, your parents.
Yes.
And that's, they conveyed strength to you. I mean, it wasn't just that they loved you, but they were very strong people.
By the way, there were parents who hid that they are Jewish from their children. I had a friend who was already at school and didn't know that he is Jewish. But when they were evacuated from Moscow, then someone from his new class told him that he is Jewish. And he came home and asked his mother, is this true? She said yes. So all these years.
But they weren't proud of being Jewish. They kept it. Whereas your
They were
parents
not proud.
and your family,
Right.
they were Jewish and they were proud of it, and they conveyed that to you.
Right.
And to
You
stand
know,
up.
Right. Our neighbors didn't have an idea what was going on inside our apartment. The teachers at school asked us to read books about how to be a good pioneer and and become a party member. My father said, no, you're not reading that. You are reading Jewish encyclopedia. He bought Jewish encyclopedia in Odessa on a black market, and that encyclopedia was published before 1917, before the revolution. So I learned a lot from the encyclopedia. Also, every day at 7, there was a program, The Voice of Israel, on the radio. And at 7:30, The Voice of America, also in Russian. And my grandfather, first of all, these signals were blocked. But a Jewish electrician, my father's patient, came to us, and he found a place where these signals could get through. And we placed a transistor there, and my grandfather was listening with his ear tied to the radio that the neighbors would not hear. And after that, he was telling us what is going on in Israel, what is going on in the free world. And there were discussions. So we existed in Ukraine, but we lived very far from Ukraine.
Can you speak a little bit about your involvement with the Refusenick movement? What? The Refusenick.
Here. One cold afternoon, right after David's last visit, he was an informer, KGB informer, who got to our family, and my father thought, and he told my father that he wants to learn Judaism. So my dad was very happy and gave him materials, and these materials went straight to KGB and were copied, and KGB was building a case against my father. So we finally realized that he was an informer, and his last visit to us, my father said that he doesn't have any more materials. And right after that,
What year are you talking about?
71. Right, one cold afternoon, right after David's last visit, the KGB arrived at our apartment, at the outpatient clinic, and arrested Papa. Mama was also taken from work. I was at home waiting for them. The clock was ticking, and it was getting late. When they were still not home by 9, I concluded that they were taken. I knew the apartment was filled with incriminating evidence. These materials were hidden behind the books in the glass-fronted bookcases. Frantically, I ran for a suitcase, the largest I could find, and I started throwing the materials into it. Mama came back later that night, exhausted from the ordeal. She could barely speak. I showed her the suitcase. I collected all I could find. What should I do with it? Luba, no materials should be found in the apartment. You have to bring the suitcase to this man tomorrow. She wrote an address on a piece of paper. Tomorrow morning, deliver this suitcase there. The next morning, when I saw KGB agents get out of their car and walk toward our building, I grabbed the suitcase and fled to the basement. Mama remained in the apartment. When the agents arrived, they raided the apartment. While they were there, I sneaked out the basement and ran to the bus stop. While I was rushing, trying to find the house Mama told me about, I kept looking over my shoulder, fearful of being followed. When I was sure I wasn't followed, I rang the bell. I waited. The man opened the door. His jaw dropped in disbelief when he saw me with a suitcase. He figured out what was inside. I can't take that. I will give you an address, and that person will take the suitcase. He wrote down the address and the bus number for me to take, and I left. I felt as I was in a spy movie. I had to travel quite a distance, and by the time that suitcase felt like it weighed a ton. Also, this address was not easy to find. Finally, I found the house, a single house in a suburban village. I knocked. A person whose face I couldn't see opened the door just enough to get the suitcase through, and then slammed the door in my face. And I, in my naivety, planned to ask the person to use the bathroom.
How old were you?
I was 18, 19.
Do you wanna talk about how your father was put in prison and the hunger strike, and that was
Yes.
quite something.
Maybe I should, yeah, I didn't write the page number here.
I mean, it's basically like right around that
It's
time
here,
period, right?
right. So,
We can talk about it here.
yeah, I can just.
All right, this will be the last, I think we're gonna have to end.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So Papa and his friends decided to meet in front of the building of Lithuanian Communist Party every evening after work. KGB didn't want any crowds together, and especially Lithuanian KGB, because Lithuanians also disliked the Soviet rule, and this Jewish crowd could teach them what to do, also right, to demand rights for them. So it was for a number of nights, and then KGB cars appeared and arrested all the people. Then they let out most of them, and only 3 people left, my father and his 2 friends. And the KGB officer said, now we will go to court. It was 10 p.m., but the court was ready. So they were expecting Papa and the friends. And they were given 10 days. No. So whatever was the verdict, Papa said that they all start a hunger strike until they will be released. They were not ready for that. So Papa and 2 friends started the hunger strike inside the place. And he explained to his friends that they have to conserve energy and not to work and not to move much, and this way they can survive. On the 10th day, they were let out. Interesting that the KGB didn't know what to do with the case, so they came to Mama's outpatient facility and told her, you will go right now with us, Dr. Polover. You will tell your husband that you want him to start eating or you want him to be released. And my mother went with them, and she wrote a letter about 3 people, not only my dad. So they said, no, we want you to write only about him. And she said, no, I will only write about 3 people. They were arrested together, they are having hunger strike together, and that's what I will do. No, it's not good. Okay, so then I'm not writing the letter, and that's how she left. But by 10 days, they decided it is getting too dangerous, and they let the 3 people out. My father he hated KGB. And he also had the nerves of steel. I tell you, nothing could make him scared or something like that. Right.
How did you use all of the lessons that you learned from your mother and father and your experience in raising your own children when they face anti-Semitism or they face the idea of being Jewish in a mostly non-Jewish world?
I have to tell you, when my oldest daughter in class in elementary school, the teacher told them, now we will make a flag of the country. She started making Israeli flag. So look, my kids know my story, and they also visited Israel many times. So I think that they are prepared.
Where was this? Was it in the United States or in Israel?
In the United States. Living in the United States, she was making a flag, her flag, Israeli flag.
Yeah.
This book ends
Mhm.
when your family is immigrating to Israel.
Yes.
So are you planning to write another book about the latter half of your
Israeli experience. You know, when the life is good, it is nothing to write. I want 2 minutes. Okay. This is interesting, right? So we are finally on the train, which is supposed to take us from Belarus to Austria. And from Austria, Israeli Sochnut would pick us up, put us on a plane, and we would land in Israel. So, as we neared Austria, the next morning, people were glued to their windows. No one wanted to miss the historic moment of crossing the border to freedom. Someone saw the distance border sign and exclaimed, "It's coming! Here it is!" Everyone in the entire car held their breath. In less than a minute, the train crossed into Austria. There was a collective sigh of relief, and then an explosion of cheering, crying, laughing, pounding the feet. Strangers embraced each other. Champagne suddenly appeared, seemingly out of thin air. After the initial awe, Papa took me aside. "You think we left Russia to save me from Gulag?" he asked. "Wrong. We left Russia to save your life. With your sharp tongue and defiant nature, you inevitably would have ended up in Siberia." This
This is really wonderful. not read this book, you can get it on Amazon. She only went through little parts of it, but you get a feel for how interesting this story is and how many aspects of it there are. So, thank you again.
Thank you.